So I'm building a roof rack for this bus, and I kind of get the feeling like Melissa is kind of happy that it's not my bus this time. So the rack's gonna be a big boy from the midsection of the bus up to the front. And because of that, I'm not exactly sure how, once I fabricate the rack, I'm gonna lift it up onto the bus. All right, before we start cutting, let's take a look at the AutoCAD design. And it's gonna have a base plate. These are gonna be our cross members. I'm thinking this is like 6-inch. This is gonna be our wind action. This is all gonna be in 1.5 inch. Brackets down here, bolted to the bus, and wood decking. And with that level of detail, we are more than ready to go. You know, I do hoard a lot of steel on the premises. I'll just say that's true. But we're gonna get some special stuff for this job. The dude wants it beefy, so I put it in order for some beef steel. All right, we got a bill for $500, $538, so we're already kind of over budget. Dog seems okay with it, so let's just press ahead. You probably noticed I got a new saw on deck. I'm just trying out this Evolution chop saw thing. Makes a pretty clean cut. I know some people would just start like tack welding right away, you know, just put a little tack on there, but I'm just gonna clamp my stuff in place as I sort out exactly where everything goes. I just gotta dial in my diagonals. You just don't want this thing all cattywampus on the top of the bus. All right, it is back to right side up, and I just flip it over to get the stuff underneath. I know you can crawl around on your back and stuff to weld upside down, but that's just not my style. The funkiest thing about building on a bus is that the top is curved. You got a little curvature at the top. So the center of the rack is gonna rest on the middle. So a lot of the load actually comes down on the rib of the bus. So this rib, that rib, yada yada on down. But there's also gonna be load here on this side. So we got to determine level, which is always kind of funky on a bus. We'll do that both by measurement and with the level. And then we'll determine the height of this leg. The key thing here is to make sure they all line up, because there's going to be a top rail on top. So that one's good. Just got to make the other ones as good. These guys are tacked and lined up, looking good, so it's time to cook them. Really cook them down. I'm gonna bust an angle right here so that the front has a little bit of like a windjammer action, especially since this guy's gonna be on the front of the bus. You know, you don't want to just be pushing a big old box down the road. So we're gonna bust a little angle. I'm thinking that looks pretty good. Basically, if I bust it out flat, it's gonna give me 180, right? Because it's like half of a circle. So we'll start with 180. And then we'll tip it down to find our angle, which is, we're gonna call that 173. So we're gonna say this is a 7-degree angle change from where it was. And then I'm just gonna bust this over to 7. All right, so that's my 7-degree chunk that I'm gonna munch out of there. I haven't set myself on fire in a while, you know. It's been like weeks. Broke down and got the old flame-proof stuff out. Now I had to make like a little change here. You can probably see it. I nipped this guy off and put my leg here. I just kind of forgot there for a minute. This is gonna be a little overhang. So that's all good. Things are tacked, and you can see I just mitered these corners. And this comes in at a curve, and this kind of wants to be flat. So I'm gonna kind of split the difference on that. And it comes over here. That seems to fit pretty good. I'll have a central support in here just to kind of stiffen stuff up, and we'll do the same thing on the back. All right, front end is tacked. Just got to cook it, and then I'll move to the back. All right, the back end is welded up. I got my little support there. And let's go around the front and let's talk about flags. All right, so the dude, he said, hey, why don't you throw some flag mounts up front? And he wanted 1.5 inch inside diameter. So I had something very close. This is like inch and almost a half inside diameter. I think they're going to be kind of cool. I'm going to put them on the sides and give them a little tip. You know, you want a little tip with your flags. You don't want straight up and down flags. And just so the water comes out of them, I'm going to leave them open on the bottom, but I'm going to just weld a little slot kind of thing to hold the flagpole so it doesn't go through. As long as no one tries to tow the bus from the flagpoles, I think we're good. I'm just doing a few welds on the bottom, and then I'm also going to clean it up on the bottom, so once I flip it, it doesn't have to be flipped again. Hitting the entire rack with the wire wheel. Every little surface, every little nook and cranny, just to get all the mill scale and rust and stuff off before I prime it. Pretty much like a really good process you probably want to emulate, you know. And I don't think I showed you this, but I did put on some rebar hooks here. This dude's just got a ladder he's gonna use, so he wanted a positive connection on the ladder, so I went with the old rebar. I feel like if it's a welding project, you just gotta have a little bit of rebar. Hold! Hold!
Holding! Holding!
Don't drop, Sussel.
Still holding.
Alright, so that was pretty good. Called in the muscle, got the rack lifted up. I didn't hear too many complaints from the crew. And you can see the way that the rack, like the load is on the ribs, right? Load on the rib, load on the rib, load on the rib. I gotta get the brackets installed, get this thing bolted down to the ribs, get the wood on, because the dude is showing up tomorrow. so using riv nuts to attach the brackets to the bus. These guys about 1,200 pounds of pull force, so laterally even more. So, you know, with 2 on each one, you're around a ton on each leg. You got 5 legs, 5 tons. I think we're good. So if you haven't used riv nuts before, this is one that's uncrushed. You can see there's kind of like a gap at the top. And then the crushed installed riv nut, basically the threads just move up on it. And I'm going to come back through and hand torque these guys just to make sure they're nice and snug. Here's the final piece of the bracket insulation, just a grade 8 or schedule 8 bolt, you know, one of those like burly bolts. Then a lock washer and a nut on the other side. All right, the bus rack is done and the bus is gone. Thanks for checking out the project. I'll see you in the next one.